had to make that a segment, and that leads us to Acho Mind. Sam Acho and Dan Graziano are back here with us. And Graz, you have an ESPN.com article featuring your bold predictions for the NFL season. You give us a prediction, and then Sam will let you know if you are Acho Mind. All right, so first, which NFC team should people not be sleeping on?
The San Francisco 49ers, this is a team that was in overtime of the Super Bowl about 20 months ago and fell apart last year due to injuries across the roster. They have Christian McCaffrey back healthy. They have Trent Williams back healthy. They have Brock Purdy signed long-term and in the fold. They still have George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. They have a lot of very good players, and they know how to win. When McCaffrey has been healthy under Kyle Shanahan, this has not just been a playoff contender, but a Super Bowl contender. 13 of the games they will play in the regular season are against teams that missed last year's playoffs. 49ers are set up.
All right, Sam, is Dan Acho Mind?
Dan Graziano, you are Acho Mind. A lot can happen in 20 months. You talk about all the players who were injured. Look at all the players who were gone. Brandon Ayuk is still not healthy, so he's going to be gone. Deebo Samuel plays for the Washington Commanders. Dre Greenlaw, one of their star linebackers who was hurt, is not coming back. He plays for the Broncos right now. There's so much talent that has left this team. So to say that they'll be contending for a Super Bowl this season with question marks at receiver has me thinking that you are absolutely Acho Mind.
There was a lot of emphasis on that Acho Mind right there, Dan. Lamar Jackson is the favorite to repeat as MVP. However, who should people not be surprised could take that award?
Jordan Love of the Packers, and this prediction is rooted in my thought that the Packers are going to have a very good team this year. They had the youngest roster in the league last year, and the only teams they lost to in games they were trying to win were the Lions, the Eagles, and the Vikings. They went 0-6 against those teams. So you split those 6 games, you have a chance to maybe make a deep playoff run, have a higher seed. I think this is a Packer team with a healthy Jordan Love. Remember, he got hurt in the opener last year. If he is healthy, I think this team will be good enough that Jordan Love will be in the MVP conversation.
Sam, I heard you chuckling a little bit. Is Dan Acho Mind?
Now, Dan, you've come back into your senses just a little bit. I love this prediction. Why? Because Jordan Love, to your point, is healthy, but he's got so many young weapons around him. Yes, there's so many receivers who have been drafted, Matthew Golden being one of them, Savion Williams being another one. But also, you talk about guys who've been in that locker room who are now behind Jordan Love. And then the defense that's getting better and better, a top 10 defense last season. I think Jordan Love will be in the MVP conversation this season based off of his health and the first-round picks that have been drafted to help support it.
Yeah, you mentioned that Jordan Love is 25-1 to win MVP. That's tied for 11th best on ESPN Bet. And Dan, Jordan Love could put the pressure on some favorites MVP odds. However, he also needs to worry about the pressure coming from your next pick. Who's that?
I would say don't be surprised if the New York Giants lead the league in sacks. Now, the Giants, have some significant holes on their roster, but up front on defense, you look at Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and then the first-round pick, Abdul Carter from this year. That is a lot of pass rushing talent. It reminds you of some of the truly outstanding Giants teams of years past, and I'm not sure this team can reach those heights, but up front, they are going to be a nightmare to try and block against the pass.
Dan, I like those names, but Sam, is Dan Acho Mind?
No, Dan, you're finally coming back to your senses. I agree, because that defensive line, there might be holes everywhere else on the roster, not everywhere else, but elsewhere on the roster. The defensive line, there are no holes. You talk about it. Guys like Dexter Lawrence on the inside, 9 sacks as an interior player. Brian Burns is a dog on the outside. Number 1. Number 2, you talk about Kayvon Thibodeau, first-round pick. And, oh, by the way, look how great Abdul Carter looked, even in limited time in the preseason. This pass rush unit is going to be dangerous. Roy Robertson-Harris, another interior pass rusher, 6'8", 6'5", or so, 6'6", but he's the dominant rusher as well. There's no question marks when it comes to that defensive line.
Okay, guys, this was fun. Maybe we can do this a little bit later. We're going to do it a little bit later.
I respect it.
Thanks so much, guys. Now for the AFC edition of Acho Mind. Every time I say that, I feel like I have to put a little bit of oomph into it just because of the way that it's set up. Dan Graziano, Sam Acho still hanging out here with us. And Dan, the AFC is crowded with legit conference championship contenders. Which team should we not be surprised makes a deep playoff run?
Well, the Cincinnati Bengals, Amina, this is a team that has had 2 down years, 2 disappointing years. Last year, a terrible defense, and they finished 9-8 both seasons. We know they have an elite offense. They have a new defensive coordinator and a new defensive system. And no, of course, they did not look good in the preseason, but the Bengals would tell you that they intentionally are not showing their hand on defense in the preseason. They get Trey Hendrickson back at practice this week. This doesn't have to be a great defense. If it's even a top 15 or 20 defense, then the offense could be good enough to get this team back to the AFC Championship game.
All right, Sam, you heard Dan. Is he out your mind?
Dan, you are out your mind. What are you thinking? This is an offensive line. You saw in the preseason, they were abysmal. They were embarrassing. They were horrible. And yes, they paid all their star receivers and Trey Hendrickson, but they're still struggling on the offensive line. Oh, by the way, they brought Trey Hendrickson back. The defense still was a low-ranked defense last year with Trey Hendrickson. Their frustrations continue and abound with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they'll be better than they were last year, but to be back in an AFC Championship, potential Super Bowl, Dan Graziano, you are mine.
I like how you put the emphasis on that. All right, Dan, like the Bengals, you have another non-playoff team from a season ago that could make some people turn their heads. What team is that?
That's the Indianapolis Colts. I think they're a sneaky contender to win their division. Question marks at quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But I don't see how Daniel Jones is necessarily a downgrade from what they've had at quarterback the last couple of years. And last year they finished 2 games behind the division champion Texans. And the year before that, they finished 1 game behind and had a game in Week 18 that if they won it, they would have been division champion. Lou Anarumo is now their defensive coordinator. They added a lot of pieces on that side of the ball. The run game with Jonathan Taylor and that offensive line. It could be a sneaky, difficult team to play if Daniel Jones can stay healthy and play like he did for the Giants a couple of years ago.
Okay,
come on,
Sam,
man, it's the season of hope.
Is Dan out your mind?
Dan, 2 for 2, you out your mind. I mean, you're over here talking about sneaky. No, none of what you're saying is actually or factually accurate. Think about it. The Indianapolis Colts are a team that's starting with Daniel Jones at quarterback. You saw how much they struggled in the preseason with Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. Receivers, it's still been a struggle as well. They didn't do great in the preseason as well. This is a team that plays in the same division as the Texans, and you saw what was happening not only with Daniel Jones in previous years, but also this year with this team. I understand Jonathan Taylor can run the ball, and the defense might be better, but you need someone who can throw the ball at a consistent level if you want to not only win the division, but try to make the playoffs. Dan Graziano, 2 for 2. Out your mind.
Dang.
All I'm saying is they haven't been that far behind the Texans the last couple of years, and they haven't had anything at quarterback. That's all I'm saying.
Quarterback is a big issue to have. I'm not going to lie. It's a big issue. All right, last one. We talked about the Bengals' defensive concerns. However, which defense can help their offense and coaches sleep a little bit better at night?
Sam's going to like this one. It's the Houston Texans. They could have the best defense in the league. When you look at this roster, on the back end, they are loaded with talent. Guys like Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley Jr. Up front, elite edge rushers and Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. They're deep at linebacker. They're deep across the defensive front. They're deep in the secondary. They're coached by D'Amico Ryans. They were top 5 in all the advanced metrics last year on defense. I think they could be even better. They could be a scary defense in Houston. What do you got?
Look, Dan said you would like this one. Is he out your mind?
Hey, now we're talking, Dan. Now you're talking. You finally come into your senses. Finally, you've all the dominant players at every level of that defense, number 1. Number 2, you talked about D'Amico Ryans, but number 3, it's health. Remember, Azeez Al-Shaair was injured in that late season run where they played 3 games in, 12 days? And all of a sudden, they're back healthy again. This team is playing with a player who I think might be the defensive player of the year in Will Anderson Jr. You obviously have Derek Stingley, who's getting better and better, one of the most elite corners in the NFL. And then Daniil Hunter, who's had back-to-back double-digit seasons, 5-time Pro Bowler. You finally got it right, Dan. Good job. 1 for 3.
Dan, you redeemed yourself with that one. You can read Dan's full article on potential surprises for 32 teams, including your favorite one now on ESPN.com. Guys, thanks. Guys, we're not saying it's time to panic, Cowboys fans. However, we are just 1 week away from the NFL opener in Philly, and Micah Parsons is still not on the field. Trey Hendrickson and Terry McLaurin ended their contract stalemates this week, but Parsons is still standing firm. And there's the little thing also about him having a sore back as well. So that's a thing.
It sure is, as we say hello to our NFL insider, Dan Graziano, and NFL analyst, Sam Acho. Dan, I'm going to start with you. Are we going to have a resolution to the situation by kickoff?
It's starting to feel that way, Christine. Yes, it's starting to feel over the last 24 hours or so like a resolution could be somewhat imminent, like next couple of days imminent. I think the Cowboys are at a point where they'd like to get this resolved, by the end of the weekend. You think about they play Thursday, so Sunday would be the equivalent of a regular game week Wednesday, and they have a full practice and all that kind of stuff. So they'd like to know who they're going to have and who they're not. So one way or the other, whether he decides to play on his current contract, whether they're able to resuscitate talks and get him a new contract, whether they trade him, which sounds like it's more of a possibility than I would have said it was a week ago, or whether he decides to keep sitting out with his back injury and hang around but not play. So there's still a lot of different possible outcomes here, but I do get the sense that we're headed towards some sort of resolution here in the next couple of days.
Okay, so Sam, based on what Dan just said, what do you think is more likely? Parsons gets a deal or he gets traded?
I think it's more likely that he does get the deal. I don't think it's like this 80-20. I think it's more of like a 60-40, 55-45. But you think about how productive Micah Parsons has been over his entire career. And yes, there's a higher likelihood of this conversation of a trade. But if Jerry Jones and a cooler head prevails, I think he'll come to the table with the deal that Micah Parsons wants. I don't see Micah Parsons really settling for anything less than being the highest paid player outside of outside of quarterback in all of the NFL. So Jerry Jones has to be able to meet him in the middle and give him the deal he wants.
Okay, so Sam thinks he's getting a deal, but Dan, we do know that there are 31 other teams that would take Parsons in a heartbeat. But which one do you think makes the most sense?
Well, it's hard to pin one down. I mean, I think, you look at teams that are contending teams that maybe one more piece might take them over the top. A team like the Green Bay Packers, who I know has been rumored out there in terms of this. We don't know for a fact that they're involved, but you could see it making sense for a team like that, or a Buffalo Bills. Also, he's 26 years old. This isn't just like a go-for-it-now move. Like if you're the New England Patriots, who you're building up your defense and you're thinking about contending for a long period of time with your new coaching staff in place, teams like that. You said it, Christine. There's no team that couldn't use him. The Commanders could use him and the Eagles could use him, but I seriously doubt they would trade him to either of their division rivals.
Okay, so Sam, he laid out a couple of contenders. Which Super Bowl caliber team do you think could use Micah Parsons?
I like Green Bay when it comes to Super Bowl caliber teams. Why? They have a 26-year-old quarterback who's Super Bowl caliber. They have a 27-year-old pass rusher named Rashawn Gary, who's also Super Bowl caliber. Now you have this 26-year-old top-tier player in the entire NFL, Micah Parsons, to be a bookend alongside Rashawn Gary, not just for this year, but for the foreseeable future with young, talented receivers, a new defensive coordinator from last season. And I think the Green Bay Packers would be a perfect fit for Micah Parsons if he does get dealt. Why? Because they have a roster that can win right now, and they'll have the incentive to try to make a move if a move is going to be made.
Okay, so all eyes on this weekend, whether or not Micah stays in Dallas or not. I'm a little sad. The drama will be over. I like drama. And more from you later. Sam, I think Amina needs you.
She does.